Innovating Education Learning World in association with WISE, an initiative of Qatar Foundation.
According to UNICEF, in countries torn apart by armed conflict, 39 million primary school children don't go to school, and tempting them back into the classroom is tough. This week we are looking at attempts to provide education in the most difficult situations in Ivory Coast, Somalia and Gaza. The violent power struggle in Ivory Coast closed schools all over the country. Now, as the turmoil recedes, the education system is recovering and campaigners are raising awareness of trauma and encouraging children to go back to school. In this report, we look at just one of the projects.
A year ago, this school in Ivory Coast was closed because of the violence sparked by the presidential elections in 2010.
Schools were either destroyed in the violence or occupied by the armed forces. And then the teachers, who had a key role in the electoral process, were also the first victims of the crisis when the repression started. And the absence of teachers always means the absence of students. We couldn't go to school because there were dead people there. They were shooting and killing people. It was horrible.
At the height of the crisis, more than 1 million children were out of school. And once peace was restored, getting them back into the classroom was hard. So UNICEF began their national Back to School campaign. That convinced about 80% of children to come back to school, but months of living in a war zone has taken its toll.
Mothers and fathers, after the war, told us they'd noticed a behavioural change in their children. For example, children who were clean at night suddenly started wetting the bed.
The UNICEF campaign involved 1,700 schools, which received teacher and student education kits, and nearly 5,000 teachers received psycho-social training.
First, they were taught to recognise the symptoms of trauma and to refer the most serious cases. And we also trained teachers in recreational activities to help treat those who were less seriously traumatised.
It takes time, but for many children, getting back to school means getting back to normal.
In Somalia, a country brought to its knees by civil war, the education system has also been wrecked. Lack of investment, teachers and resources makes learning an uphill struggle for many students. But one project is helping Somalis return from abroad to help rebuild and develop the whole system. Let's have a look.
For over 2 decades, conflict and the lack of central government have devastated the Somali education system. Buildings were destroyed and teachers became refugees. As a result, only around 30% of children go to school.
Children would come straight from the conflict context and enroll in school, and what's associated with that, all kinds of disparate ages, education levels. Because they were born in a conflict situation, raised in a conflict situation, they had no other, the only references they had in their minds were those associated with conflict.
Amina is a technical advisor working with a program to encourage Somali teachers to move back to the country and help rebuild the education system.
ownership means about the ministry being involved in every step of the way in developing the institutional structures and the capacity to plan the education program for the country, implement strategic plans, and to manage that process, and therefore build the capacity and skills to be able to do it for themselves without external support in the long term.
Where resources are scarce, effective planning is crucial. Technical advisors work closely with the Education Ministry trainees.
This information will be analysed, and then we're going to use this information for planning resources. We're going to use to determine the number of the teachers the school needs, the number of textbooks the school needs, the number of facilities for the children.
Finance management, human resource management, planning, policy and gender equality are all important.
The participation of girls in schools, in many schools, is very, very poor. This can be due to several reasons, but one of the important reasons we have found out is that the teachers themselves are not taught on gender issues.
In the Palestinian territories, violence and conflict have resulted in limited schooling and desperate living conditions for many people in Gaza. But one Doha-based project is successfully tackling some of the problems, from psychological rehabilitation to offering scholarships. More now in this report.
In Gaza, 60% of the population is under 18 years old.
Students in Gaza keep suffering from the continuing crisis of electricity, continuing crisis of lack of fuel, and it's a problem because people cannot focus anymore to study, to focus, to practice their university life under such bombardment and under such chaotic situation.
The NGO Alpha Kura provides education grants for students, but only 20% of them find jobs once they're qualified.
Firstly, I was more relaxed because, my father couldn't pay for my studies. So now I'm sure I can continue at university.
The idea is to educate young people who will pass on their knowledge to the rest of the population. For example, Hala, Salam's sister, used her grant to get a diploma in fashion and then to open up her own clothes shop.
Actually, as you can see, the project not only employs 3 girls and a man, it involves women who work from home, doing embroidery. So actually the project is feeding a lot of people, and it involves different people. I hope to build this business more and more, so that I can even export out of Gaza.
Alpha Kura is working to keep young people in touch with the world outside Gaza by organising trips and using virtual workshops and social networks. Their students are in touch with students in the States and in Qatar.
There is a young people's voice which we don't hear. That's why we offer a platform for dialogue between young people, so they can talk, improve their language skills and realise what unites them rather than what divides them.
The team at Alpha Kura try their best to turn the tide in Gaza, but the situation is so extreme that their efforts are a drop in the ocean.
As As usual, we are looking forward to your feedback on this episode. So don't hesitate to get in touch on our social media pages. That's it. We will be back soon, so join us next time. Goodbye for now.
Learning World in association with WISE, an initiative of Qatar Foundation.